Thanks for coming today. About a month ago, I sat in on the same presentation that these guys gave to David Cole, and I was actually so impressed with the .Mac and the Mac presentation that I went and bought a little iMac or whatever you call it. So these guys have been nice enough to come and give us a similar version of that presentation that they gave to David Cole and MSN. And please welcome Jeff Smith and Jim Grady, and hope you enjoy.
Great, thanks. We're working now, right? There we go. All right, well, can we switch screens here? Well, why don't I get started while that's getting set up? First of all, my name's Jeff Smith. I'm a product planner over in the Macintosh group. We're in this big company of Microsoft. There's about 150 of us or so that work on Macintosh things. If you're familiar at all with our work, we build Office for the Mac, but we also build Internet Explorer. We do MSN Messenger for the Mac, Remote Desktop Connection Client, and we just about a month ago released MSN, an MSN client for the Mac as well. We are in a strange position where we're building software for a competitor's platform. The good thing is we make a good amount of money from it, so it allows us to get away with a little bit more than you'd imagine. I was asked to give a presentation to David Cole to try to share a little bit of what Apple's doing overall, especially in the online space. So I put together a presentation, as Lili said, that I gave, I guess, about a month ago now. And I'm thrilled to come in and talk to you guys and give you an update on what it is. I think the thing I want to leave with you today is that Apple's actually a pretty formidable competitor in the online space from a BYOA strategy, bring your own access strategy. Apple does not offer dial-up services or broadband services themselves. You have to get that from someplace else. But the .Mac services are meant to go on top of that. And I think the primary reason why they're such an interesting competitor to Microsoft there certainly isn't because of their market share. It's because of the product itself. The integration of the .Mac service with the operating system and with the applications themselves is quite stunning. And they've done a really good job focusing on a couple key things to make sure it works really well. So I'll try to take you guys through that. I didn't prepare slides, and I'm sure you're really disappointed about that. I was going to just try to do all demo for the whole session here. And I've got a set of things I want to make sure that I show you, but I can go through these in whatever order. So if there's things that you want to make sure I talk about, or there's questions you have along the way, by all means, just let me know, and I'll be happy to try to show you some of the stuff. I think this Mac is set up to cover most of the stuff you'd want. This is my PowerBook that I use in my day-to-day job, and we actually do have a direct tap out to the internet here, so I can use all the services. And theoretically, I haven't quite had a chance to fully test it yet, but I believe it should work, so we should be able to show you most of the stuff. Let me give you a bit of background on the market, just so you kind of can put that into some context. Apple itself is today got an installed base worldwide of, we think, about 16 million computers. Apple will tell you they have about 25 million, but they're basically counting every single Mac sold in the past 8 to 10 years, which is probably not realistic. At least I don't think it is. They are going through a migration right now of their install base from an older version of the operating system, OS 8, OS 9, to a new operating system called OS 10. And OS 10 is, versus OS 9 is kind of equivalent from going almost from Windows 3.1 to Windows XP. It's such a dramatic difference in terms of the architecture and the capabilities that it is a very significant move. The operating system is fundamentally different. It's based on Unix. It has some of the APIs that are available on the old operating system, but only in what they call a Carbon API set, which is sort of glommed onto what they consider to be the sort of the native API set, which is Cocoa. We build all of our applications in Carbon, primarily because we have massive millions of dollars worth of investment in those, and are able to get those things to run quite well on the platform. Apple would love us to just stop doing all of that and start rewriting it in the new API set, but I think we all know that's a little ridiculous. So they are trying to push new developers to do that, but neither us, nor Adobe, nor Macromedia, nor anyone else really is going down that path. But it does reflect an important thing, which is OS 10 is in some ways fundamentally incompatible with the old system. And in fact, Classic running on OS 10, which is the old operating system, actually runs in an emulated environment in some way. You actually boot into sort of a blue box, an entire set of OS 9, and then your applications run within that. They've done some clever things to sort of blur the distinction between OS 9 and OS 10 applications, so you can copy and paste between them, and the windows float beside each other. But if you want to take advantage of the capabilities of OS 10, you just really have to move to OS 10 applications. As a result, people are not making that move quickly. They're waiting until all the apps are available. They're waiting until they get a new computer to update. And so out of that 16 million install base, we think that they've got about 5 million that have moved over so far. Again, Apple will tell you a number that's a little bit higher, but based on our market research, that's about where that is. The Mac group here, we're doing all of our development on OS X now. We've made that move to switch over to that. So all the stuff that we're doing is there. And with respect to the discussion today, pretty much all the stuff that you'll see really requires OS X. You can be a .Mac subscriber and be on OS 9, and you can access your email, and you can access your .Mac internet-based hard drive and things like that. But for the integration that you see here, you really only get that if you go to OS X, and Apple's been marketing in that way as a benefit to make that move. And they've been marketing it, frankly, as every Mac needs .Mac, I think is the tagline, and trying to get people to up that, to chip in that extra $99 per year that it costs for .Mac when you make the move over. The .Mac service itself, let me just go up to Apple's website here. Do I need to go over OS X at all? Is that something that anyone is interested? I saw in the notice that actually went out today that it said, and Jeff will talk about OS X, and I hadn't planned to, but if that's something that is of a bit of interest, I can certainly show you some of those things. Take a minute or two on that? Okay. If you're familiar with a Macintosh, then some of the things that are part of OS X make a lot of sense to you immediately. So your hard drives are on the desktop. You've got your Mac menu here. And that's almost it. A lot of the things that you might have learned as a Mac user, you go away to some degree when you move over to OS X. So the location of files, the way that you run applications, etc., is fundamentally different. And just hide that for a second. This is one of the major changes. This is sort of it's called the dock, and sitting at the bottom of the screen, it holds all your different applications. And it holds them whether they're running or not. And the only distinction you have as to whether an app is running or not is this tiny black triangle underneath it that tells you the application is actually running. When you boot an application, the icon bounces within the dock so that you can see it. They do a bunch of other kind of fun, clever things. And this is sort of one of the big things that I think you should take away from all of the stuff you see today, which is that Apple has an attention to detail and fit and finish that is just fabulous. They just really invest in things that sometimes I would say here we have just a hard time pushing into that Pry 1 list. And they put the effort into some of those things. So you can do things like turn magnification on the dock, and now the icons will fly up very large and annoyingly into your face like this. But and you can control how much it magnifies and things like that. A lot of different control over this kind of thing. And you can just see the quality that they put behind these, the development of the icons, or just the animation itself and how smooth it is. Part of OS X is something called Quartz Extreme, or Quartz itself, which is a drawing layer that's part of the operating system. And in the past year, they introduced something called Quartz Extreme, which is the version of Quartz that is hardware accelerated. And they're taking advantage of that in a lot of places within the operating system and the applications that are running on it. And so one of the things that you'll see that Quartz brings to the table is things like soft drop shadows on objects and some of the animation effects that you get. It allows them to get a level of quality out of some of these things that's quite stunning. Now, I am not blessed with one of the latest Macintoshes. This is about 2 years old. And the VRAM on this machine is, I think, 8 or 16 megs. That's not enough to run the Quartz Extreme stuff. You need a 32 meg video card, which all the current Macs ship with, but older Macs don't take advantage of it. So any of the Quartz stuff that's done is done without hardware acceleration. So, so things like, if you actually bring up the CPU monitor and you launch an application, you watch that icon bounce on the dock on a non-Quartz Extreme, you see it spike up while it's doing all the CPU processing to bounce an icon. So the boot time goes up for the app because it's trying to do this little animation. You can turn it off, thank goodness, but that kind of thing goes away with Quartz Extreme. They do a lot of other things for compositing as part of that. PDF is actually the native format behind OS X for on-screen display, and so there's a lot of benefits that they get there. PDF is just native. You can print any file, whether you build it into the application or not. You can print from any application and send that directly to PDF. So from here, you can just automatically save that out to a file. And so it's very easy to generate those files. Inside the operating system, they actually ship with a PDF preview application, which is almost like a miniature Adobe Acrobat. It doesn't do everything Acrobat does, but it allows you to exchange PDFs. So that's a key part of the operating system as well. You can see probably the most visible aspect of it is what they call the Aqua interface. So this gel-like, very colorful interface on the operating system here is used everywhere. So you can see some of these animation effects. Some of the different controls have that sort of glowing look, glassy sort of look. Now we're hearing from Apple that future evolutions of OS X are going to go a little bit away from this because it's very hard to build applications and lay them out in this environment. So I don't know if you can see well, but if you notice this toolbar, for instance, here, in the background on that, there's this white and gray line alternating down. As you place controls and graphics objects on there, you can imagine you can just get those out of alignment by a pixel or two, and suddenly your application looks awful. So these are the kind of things we're kind of hoping Apple is able to get away from, because it just makes building applications much slower because you have to worry about some of these things. Apple loves worrying about these things, so we're not sure they're going to actually do it. So, but that is some of the elements of it there. I think probably the best way to see the rest of OS X is to take a look at it as we go through here. And so what I'll do is I'm going to move on and start showing you some of the applications here. The first thing I want to do here is let me just bring up something called Safari. Yes? Is there a user-accessible shell? A user-accessible shell from the standpoint of...
Can you get a prompt terminal?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a Unix-based operating system, right? So you can actually go into applications, and they very wisely bury it down into the utilities, because die-hard Mac users don't think you should have a terminal. So yeah, down here you get a lot of things. Now you can see that performance is an issue on OS X, and this is an older machine, so you really do need a modern machine for that. But yeah, you can bring this up, and there's of course a bunch of websites for Unix geeks that have now said I'm running Mac OS X because it's the best of Unix and a really great looking OS, and that is certainly a threat. We've actually had a number of cases where we've seen in accounts organizations like NASA, for instance, looking at going to OS X because they used to put on the desktop of some of their scientists a Macintosh so they could do their email and their word processing, and then they'd have a Unix machine so they could actually go and do their analysis and things like that. Well, Apple is really pushing hard on that, and they announced X11 support on OS X now, and that's now shipping, and a number of other things really targeted the scientific community. And so we've heard from groups like NASA that they're looking at OS X as a way to get rid of that, just have one machine that does all of it, all the productivity stuff as well as the scientific research. So it's interesting to think about that from a competitive standpoint. But yes, there you go. There's your terminal app, which I'm probably not going to demo for you. So let me just get out of that here. Anyhow, let me first of all go down here and, well, actually, let me turn off this magnification because that'll just drive me berserk here. Safari is a browser from Apple, and this was released by them a few months ago. Strangely enough, Apple did not have their own browser. They shipped with our browser as the native browser on the platform. That was the default to set up. And for a number of reasons have decided that they wanted to go off and do their own browser. The primary reason, we believe, is that they're looking for more control over the platform, but fundamentally it's also for application development, obviously, because they didn't have programmatic HTML controls that you could build into an application. That's certainly part of this now, so there's something called a WebKit, very much like IE in that sense. You can now start plugging that into applications. Safari itself really is a very basic sort of browser that focused on one major thing, which is speed. It's a very fast browser. It's significantly faster than pretty much almost any other browser on the Mac. They absolutely nailed that part of it. From that standpoint, it's good. It's not really great compatibility-wise. It doesn't offer some of the security things you would need to, for instance, log into a SharePoint site. I can't do that from Safari here behind the firewall. But for a consumer-level browser, it's actually very, very good. It supports things like tabs, so that you can actually have tab browsing within that. And overall, it's quite a good tool. One of its notable features, just to show you this for a second, is the way they manage bookmarks. So, of course, you see the little link bar here. It provides drop-down menus and all of that. You can actually open all of these in the tabs. Or you can actually go to this bookmark manager here. And it actually allows you to have folders and groups and organize all of your bookmarks here within Safari. Now, just in the past 2 weeks, they also announced support for roaming bookmarks. So if you're a .Mac subscriber, you can now synchronize your bookmarks to .Mac and then keep those bookmarks in sync across machines. And I'll actually show you how that works today between machines. No, I'll show you how the synchronization itself works. But overall, Safari is pretty interesting from that standpoint. And frankly, it's, given that IE is very much a cost center for us more than anything else, it's really forced us to go back and look at what level of investment we want to make in that going forward, given that Apple's going down this path. Certainly one of the elements of it as well is that .Mac is an internet-based service, and so now with Safari they have a way to add additional functionality on top of .Mac. And as I go through this, I'll show you some of the ways in which it would be pretty obvious that they would want to expand Safari and maybe enhance .Mac as a result. So let's talk about .Mac just basically. $99 a year. You get an email account. You can add up to 10 additional email accounts to it for $5 a year extra. You receive 100 megabytes of web space, and you can add web space to that if you want at the cost of $1 per megabyte, up to 1 gigabyte. So if you, for some reason, would like to give them $1,000 for a gigabyte of space, you can do that. I don't know why you'd want to, but It provides, I talked about email, it provides an address book online, it provides this disk space, it provides also a homepage support. So when you get a .Mac account, you get your username at mac.com as your email account, and you get homepage.mac.com/username as your homepage. And so you can go to that web page and do whatever you need to there. So we can just jump over to that right now. And I don't think I have anything actually up on my web page right now, but we'll go and post something to that. Provide a web interface to manage that. So you can see you can create different sites and groups and add pages to it. You can access your entire website from the what they call their iDisk. There's just a folder there called Sites, and all the web page stuff sits in there. So if you just would like to write some HTML and throw images up there and have a website out there, you can absolutely do that. There are some shareware vendors on the Mac platform that use their .Mac account as their storefront, for instance. So not that they get extra stuff from Apple to do anything like the purchasing, but they just happen to host it there. So that's certainly something you can do. They certainly don't seem to be shutting any of them down. Yeah. Now, interestingly, they do have bandwidth limitations on the site, and they will go up if you spend more with them, but they don't go to the point where you would want to actually run a reasonable web business on it. I'll come back a little bit later on, but you can see that you can actually do web page creation from here. So you can, well, let me actually just show this to you over here. So you can actually just simply choose a theme and then decide from this what you'd like to add to that theme. And what it's actually done here is it's gone into my pictures folder up on my .Mac account, and it's pulled out the photos that are there. And I can click on one of the, actually I shouldn't have clicked Dad Goofball. I'm sure that's awful. Me being the dad. Yeah, there we go. Anyhow, so you can click on that, and this will help to build that web page here. So again, a web-based interface around that. And you can see here's this web page. You can then go in and actually edit all of these web pages if you want. So if I click on the edit menu here, all of these things you saw now become controls. And I can then just simply go add text, control what pictures I show of my beautiful daughter, click themes, 2 columns, 3 columns, etc. So you can do all of that through the website. And I'll come back to that later on because the big thing I want to show you is the way that they also hook this into the applications they've got. Go back to the home page on .Mac, and we'll just talk about a couple other things. They provide a couple standalone applications that you get only by being a .Mac member. One of them is a backup application, so you actually back up information to your .Mac account. Again, I don't know why you would actually want to go and do that, because you don't usually have much space up there to get access to, and you're now dealing with network speed. But certainly if you want to get access to it from another computer, I suppose there's some benefits there. They have greeting cards, which I won't waste your time with. There's antivirus that you get. You actually get a Virex, McAfee's Virex, as part of your subscription to that, and they provide free updates to those viruses over the course of the time. And then they have specific support there as well. So that's the core of what .Mac itself is about. And if you looked at sort of a brochure, that's what we talked about. Yeah.
What sort of security do they offer for their files while they're up there?
You basically can place files either into a public folder, in which case pretty much anyone can get access to that, or you can place it into any of the other folders, which are considered accessible only to you if you log in. And you either log in through the website, or I'll show you in a second, you log in from your machine and actually mount the drive on your machine. You can set a password on the public folder or on any website as well. And then all you simply do there is just give out that password to somebody. There's nothing more than that. There's no user control to grant access to certain members, to deny access to others. There's none of that type of capability. It's very, very rudimentary. Any other questions? Okay. Well, let's jump out of this for one quick second. I want to go back here and start talking about some of the integration. So if you think about the sort of the core services of it, let's first of all talk about setting up your Macintosh. When you buy a new PowerBook, iMac, whatever, Lili just did this, it'll take you through an entire setup routine. And one of the things it'll ask you as you go through that is, do you have a .Mac account? And if you don't, would you like to get one? If you either have one or get one, it'll actually prompt you for that information during setup. So as you're configuring your computer, it'll capture this. So right here within what is Apple's equivalent of the control panel, it grabs your username, you put your password in here, it stores it. You can even buy it right from here. It'll then, based on that, allow you to log into all these services directly from on the machine. The integration is really very smooth here. So what I just did is clicked on the tab for iDisk. It's gone up to the .Mac service, looked at my drive, and told me whether how much disk space I've got available on that drive. And I can then control access privileges, like we were just talking about here, control that here. I can then go over, based on me just simply entering my .Mac account information, it configures all of this for me. So I just have to say, here's my username. It sets up that email account, and it hooks it directly into the mail application that ships with OS X. And by default, it'll set up the Safari browser as your default too. That's not so much a .Mac thing, though. But that's sort of the entry point to it. And once you've set that up, a lot of things get enabled very, very easily. One of those, for instance, is right off the Go menu. You can actually connect directly to your iDisk from here. So you don't have to do anything special. You entered your account information that's now stored. It's connected up to it, and it uses WebDAV to access this thing. And I'm now looking at my iDisk up on the internet. If I want to drag and drop stuff up to this folder, I can navigate through this. I can take items out of here and just grab them and drag and drop them. It looks and works just like any disk on your machine. I won't do that for the sake of time. I think you know what that would look like. But it's very easy to manage that. And you can see the folders that are here as well. Basically, I have up to whatever I've got available. I think I have 500 megs or something. And by the way, I didn't pay for all that, so don't worry. But I'm not that stupid. I can fill up the documents folder, the movies folder, the music folder, all of that with these things, and up to the 500 megabyte limit. The sites are where my home pages go, so if you actually open this up and look through it, you'd see this is where those files are that we just demonstrated on that a few seconds ago. One of the other things, though, is that down here, they also use this as a way to distribute software. So under the software folder, this does not count towards your hard drive space. They post updates to their own software. They post third-party software as well under here. So if there's some cool utilities or what have you, we'll go and throw this in here as well. So it's a real easy way to go and get access to this thing. And especially when Apple first launched OS X, they were using this as a way to push a lot of updates and cool new OS X apps down to people to get awareness around some of the stuff, because for a long time, availability of apps was a big concern. So that's one of the first things around that. Let me jump to the Mail application. Let's talk a bit about this.
Is that also equivalent to Windows Update then? So when a security patch is released, it just goes to that software?
You could go there. They have their equivalent of software update for the operating system. I'll show you that briefly here. This has no dependency at all on .Mac if you're an OS X user. In fact, it's available for OS 9 as well. They have software update. Right? And here, it'll keep track of installed updates. You're able to go out and check the network for it. It'll check it. As you can see, I've got it scheduled to check weekly against that site. And we'll see if there's anything. No software update. If there were any, they would come down. You could download them and install them. We were just doing some testing the other day. And since Apple launched OS 10.2 Jaguar last fall, they have shipped 6 different updates to the operating system and a bunch of updates to the Java machine and a whole bunch of other components, to the tune of about 90 megabytes worth of updates over that period of time. And obviously that's a bit of a concern for us because we've targeted an older OS version, and we're going to have some of our users upgrading during that process, but at least it's built in for that. Anyhow, I'm digressing. Let me keep plugging away at this. This is, sorry.
The extras folder that you showed, is it a revenue opportunity for them, or is it just free stuff that they throw in?
The only revenue opportunity right now is around buying more space. But one of the things from an Office standpoint that we really are thinking about is where does Apple go with .Mac going forward? I think there's varying opinions, but I'm of the opinion that it's very logical that Apple evolves .Mac to offering business-type services, primarily to small business customers, where you have not just a business website, but things like SharePoint-type services, where you can have document libraries sitting up there. You have shared calendars and that sort of thing. That's very logical for them to do, and would be pretty consistent with some of the things there. And now I could imagine there would be a $99 consumer .Mac and then a $499 business .Mac for your Mac shop of 5 people type of thing. So we're not sure, but that certainly seems logical. The other thing I should probably mention is if you're following the company at all, you know that in January they announced an application called Keynote, which is a presentation graphics package, direct competitor to PowerPoint. Happy to show that to you guys if you want to see it. It's not on the plan today, but we think this is the first of a set of applications that are all about going into the productivity space in the Mac. Apple's going to be our competitor. We think sometime within the next 6 to 12 months, Apple will have a productivity suite on the Mac going head-to-head with Office. And so when you start going down that path, then you start to think about how could they use this online service to supplement that application and build some new services around it. Yeah.
They're also driving revenue with some of the online integrations with things like iTunes for the music store, and then also with iPhoto with the purchasing online photographs.
Yep, I'll show that actually. I forgot that on the plate. You're absolutely right. And having a .Mac account makes a ton of that stuff easier.
Jeff, do you know what the attach rate is for .Mac to consumer pieces?
Yeah, so we expect, or we think that their numbers right now are at about 300,000 users. They announced when they first brought the service out that they'd gotten to 100,000 within the first month or so, and around 180,000 in the next 3. They announced 200,000 in January. So just kind of plotting it out, we think they're maybe around 300,000 now. Two things I should mention about that. That's
5 million, so it's like 6% then?
Well, it depends on what your denominator is, right? So if you want to look at all Mac users divided by 16 million, if you want to look at just OS 10 users, because it really benefits of being on OS 10, it's 5 million. If you want to look at consumers, half that number one more time. So now suddenly you're over 10% of the install base on that. So a number of ways to cut it. But it's actually pretty decent penetration. I should mention, in addition to that, though, is that .Mac wasn't called .Mac last summer. .Mac before that was basically something called iTools, and it was free. And they had millions of members. I believe it was 3 million members. Do you remember? Something like that, right? It was a lot of people. And Steve Jobs got up on stage at Macworld in New York and said, you know, the internet era is over, or at least this bubble has burst, and we all need to make money, and, you know, come on, you love us, don't you? It's now $99. And the community just exploded. It was just this incredibly negative thing for Apple because they had, at the beginning of the whole iTools thing, pushed it as a free Mac account for life, and then reneged on that years later. So on one level, you look at 300,000 and go, geez, that's not too bad. The other way you can look at it is to say, well, they used to have 3 million members, and they were able to only keep 10% of them when they turned it into a pay-for service. So a couple different ways to cut that. All right. Unless there's other questions, I'll keep going forward in this. Yeah?
Why do you think people fork over $99 for it? Is it loyalty? Is it the tools? Is it antivirus?
Yes. I think we actually did a study last summer to look at it just after it had sort of rolled out and tried to understand what some of those things were. The two primary drivers were the email access. The hard drive space was a little one, but the brand played a strangely large role in that. Just the idea that it's a service from Apple, that you get benefits in the operating system from it. A lot of people were signing up for that. But I think I'd love to run the study again because we ran it early enough that a lot of the Apple early adopters were certainly within that base of users. But those were the primary drivers at the time.
Also, has it even been a year yet?
Want me to do that? Keep plugging away.
A primary driver, too, is that if you have a .NET account for Mac, it's a really easy way to exchange files with people on Windows because they can just access your
That is true. You can actually get at, because it's just a WebDAV folder up in the cloud, you can actually hit your iDisk from a Windows machine. In fact, Apple now ships a little rinky-dink utility that allows you to enter your name, click a button, and boom, it's now mounted as a Z drive or whatever on your machine. So you can get to that from Windows. That's certainly true. Okay, let me just keep plugging away here. I want to make sure that I show you at least 3 more things. One is Mail, the other is the iCal calendar application, and the last is iTunes. I want to talk to you about that. We'll see how much we get through in that. Mail, really quickly, think of this as Outlook Express. It's free. It ships with the operating system. It's a rudimentary mail package. And I won't show you a lot of the functionality here. It has a number of nice features within it that aren't quite relevant to this discussion. But one of the most important aspects of it is the way that it does integrate with .Mac. So once you've actually got this thing set up, the .Mac account is configured automatically for you. And it'll immediately connect up to Apple's service and start pulling those things down for you. So that's just pre-configured for you within that. The address book, when you're composing an email, is available here. And this is a OS-level address book. It is touted by Apple as an address book that is available to any application. And there's a little bit of traction on it, but Apple hasn't published enough around the APIs and the tools to do it. We haven't quite seen that take off yet. But they certainly are touting this as an address book that's available to the whole operating system. You can create different groups, set up the folks there, supports vCards, all the sort of things you'd expect. And it ties directly into the Mail application, or the Mail application here. That's Mail, just really briefly. The address book I showed you as a pop-up window within that, as a separate application. This is very straightforward. You can't even really imagine doing a comparison to something like Outlook, what have you. It's very, very basic and straightforward. But for addressing email, for just having somebody's home address and that kind of thing, it's absolutely fine. They do also support let me just see if I can find one of these here. They also support user tiles. You can add a photograph to it. If I can ever locate one of these, there you go. So you can place a picture within that and things like that. So again, these extra little things that Apple does are kind of interesting. Now, iCal they announced last summer with the .Mac service, and iCal is really a personal calendaring application, and it has a couple things that are interesting to talk about here. One of which is the integration with .Mac. Second is they support this idea of multiple calendars. And so we would think of them as in terms of things like categories or what have you. But Apple just treats it very, very straightforward. They say you have a calendar for home, you have a calendar for work, you have a calendar for your hobbies and birthdays and things like that. Just go and create a new calendar. Then what you can do is display one or more calendars all at the same time on the screen. So you can actually bring up a personal calendar alongside your work calendar. I've got my wife's calendar here, and I'll talk about how that happens here. And so you actually display multiple calendars all at the same time, turn them on and off. What's interesting is it all integrates with .Mac. So what you can actually do is take a calendar, and you can say, all right, so I've got my calendar here. I want to go up, and I want to go and actually publish this calendar out to the internet. And as a .Mac user, all I do is enter a name for it and click Publish on .Mac. And you can control what type of information gets published. Click Publish, and it will take, basically what it does, it will take an ICS file and put it up onto a server. And then there's applications that get to talk to that and pull that apart to demonstrate. So now, there it is. There's my link to that calendar. I can actually visit the page, and it'll bring that up under a web view. And I don't think there's much in this, which is fine. So here's the web view of that calendar I just published. I can also go and click Send Mail. Brings up my mail application, which dropped in the back here. It'll drop all the links to it, and I can now enter a list of people that I want to have now subscribe to it, because that's the other half of this. So I can now come up to this location, and I can go, well, actually, let me just click on that to show you how that works. So if I...
Ongoing? Like if you make changes to your calendar, you have
if you want. Yeah, you can control the update schedule. You can actually control it so every time you make a change, it republishes it to the site. On the other side, if I come down here, I can take this link, which doesn't seem to be doing it. Well, if it was a hyperlink and I clicked it, that webcal tag will actually drop me right back into iCal, and I can subscribe to that from there. So that allows me to add calendars to the list. To give you an idea of what's going on around this little publish and subscribe thing, let me show you something. Let me actually spell that correctly. iCal Share is a website that was set up within probably 2 weeks of iCal appearing, and now has thousands of calendars that people have created and published. Now, why would you publish your personal calendar? Well, you wouldn't, and people don't. But you might want to publish things like calendars for sports teams, or calendars for hobbies, or groups, or businesses, or what have you. And you can see all the different calendars down this left-hand side. So as of now, there's 1,400 different calendars here. Actually come down and say, I want to pick up something around the news, whatever it is. Any interest that you have, you can actually pull these calendars here off of that. And let's just say, for whatever reason, I want to subscribe to this calendar. I click this link. It takes me right over to iCal to subscribe to that. I can control how often I refresh it, so you can control how often it updates here. Say I want to just make sure every week I'm getting the latest stuff. Click Subscribe, connects up to the web, pulls that calendar down right into iCal. Maybe a big one, and adds it to the list. And I can now have that alongside. That's how my wife and I are being able to look at each other's calendar. So when she's on call, she adds that. I know she's busy on Friday, and we can just keep that thing in sync between the two machines. So it's an interesting scenario, and one that's just, I don't know if you're getting the same impression. It's just very easy. They're not burying this under a bunch of extra functionality. They don't, and this is the big thing with Apple. They don't figure out the 15 options. They pick one, maybe two, and they try to nail it. And when you do the big feature checklist and you say, here we have this and they have that, they've got 4, we have 9, they still win in many ways because the 4 they have are really good. And so that's sort of that attention to detail. Although in this case, this isn't working. So let's hide that. And we'll move on and show you some of the other stuff. So that's iCal. Just make sure I'm showing you all the stuff. Let me go and show you iTunes. On here, by the way, so now iCal's giving me an error message, and so it's bouncing in the dock to have me go over there and look at it. So, yeah, couldn't get it, whatever. So I'll just cancel that. Okay, let me go over to iTunes. Well, actually, no. You know what I'll do? Let me show you something else before I do that, because I would sort of keep within the same vein. The other thing that they announced is something called iSync, and iSync is a system-level synchronization tool that allows you to synchronize information from your address book or iCal to things like a PDA or a phone or to .Mac. And so in this particular case, what I've got configured is synchronization up to .Mac, but I can add other devices to it. The other thing I can add to it is an iPod. And you can actually synchronize. I'm sure people have heard about these. This is an MP3 player. This one has a 10 gig hard drive in it, and the latest one's the largest, I think, of 30. it not only allows you to play music, but you can actually put all of your iCal calendars on it. You can put your contacts on this, and there's a whole UI to browse through that. So you can take that with you. Plug that into your machine, and you can actually use this iSync to sync to it. Well, all you have to do really is when you get your .Mac account set up, you just simply enter it in, tell it what you want to have it synchronize, and that's it. And once you do it, click sync, it'll take all that local stuff, gather it up, pump it up to the website. Now what you can do is a number of things. You can look at your addresses online so that when you're using their webmail, you've got all your addresses there. You can synchronize between Macintoshes. So you can keep 5 or 6 Macs in sync, including bookmarks for the browser, all your contacts, things like that. And they continue to add to this with new additional services every time. So the bookmark sync was just recent. They're adding Bluetooth phones to this. They're adding PDAs, all those sort of things. Yeah.
What about the application, actually installing applications into that space and having them sync down to computers?
You know, how is this extensible? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Not really. It's promised. Apple has said they're going to make iSync an extensible architecture, because obviously this is very logical that we would like to be in there so you could use our tools for this. But it's not something they've made available to anybody yet. Theoretically, we understand a bit about the architecture. Theoretically, you could just take a data source like our Entourage, which is equivalent to basically Outlook, and have that be a source of data that gets pumped up to .Mac and distributed across the devices. So theoretically. Okay, so that's iSync. And again, if you're a .Mac subscriber, I hope it's kind of hitting you how many places here you're getting some value add from these different things with all these different applications. That's not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Open that back up. All right, so if you've been following the news, you know that Apple has this thing called iTunes and introduced this online music store, and it's solved the world's problems. And they've sold 3 or 4 million songs since then. You know, I'm joking around, but you know what? They actually, if you've read any of the reviews or have had a chance to use it, you know they did a really good job with this. Again, they focused on a couple core things and really kind of nailed it. So iTunes is basically a music management and playing tool, so you can just take your CD, put it in, rip the music, have it organized, sorted, and do all that sort of stuff, album cover art and all that kind of thing. But the big thing they added was the music store. So you click on the music store, and interestingly, it all is hosted within this application. So it jumps out to the music store. Make that a bit wider for you here. And gives you a link to all the different artists that they've got up here you can go through. And they've done a really great job, I think, at being able to allow this to be a really good experience browsing through this stuff. So you can choose a genre, you can go through new releases, click on those, jump you to a particular spot, you see the album, you see the songs. They offer previews of every song that they've got up on the site. They have 30, oops, there we go. So they've got 30 seconds from every single song that's part of the store. And you notice up here, look what's up here in my iTunes window. It's my .Mac account. And so all you had to do when you activated this copy of iTunes was enter your .Mac information, or at least authenticate that within this. And now this application knows to use that. So if I go and take a look at some particular song that I want, let's, well, gee, I can buy a song. Let me think here for a second. Let's go to REM here for a second. Take a look at that. The navigation, you can see sort of the trail up here. I can take a look at all of REM's different music, pick one of these off here, listen to a song. You can buy the whole album. I can take a particular song that if I like it, and all I do is say, great, awesome, I'll click buy. Pops up a window to verify your information. I haven't bought anything on this machine, so as soon as I enter that and remember it, I'll never get this again. Click buy. Authenticates it against the server. Are you sure you want to buy it? Yes, and don't warn me again about that, because I want to be able to purchase much more quickly than this. And that's it. It's downloading it. So now it's downloaded. It has a custom group here called Purchase Music, and there's that song. Pulls down the album art. Got it available. It's an AAC file, an MP4 file, recorded at 128 kilobits per second. So if you're a real audiophile, you're probably not going to be happy with that. But for a lot of people, that's certainly more than enough. And certainly the ease at which you can do this and just browse the store is pretty amazing. What's interesting is that about half of the music they're selling are singles. I mean, you look at that another way from an album store perspective. half of them are albums. So the idea that people are going to buy fewer of those is not seem to be paying out. But you can certainly purchase whatever song you want. So that's a pretty cool thing. That's iTunes. I have more that I could show, but I've got about 2 minutes, and I don't know if I want to go too much over.
Can you show Rendezvous?
I can, but I don't have another Mac within the subnet, so I don't know if it's actually going to go and work.
Show what it does. Talk about what it does, and then maybe also a query within Sherlock to show the custom.
Sure, I can do that too. All right. Well, let me start off with Rendezvous. Rendezvous is a universal plug-and-play networking technology that Apple has that basically allows different applications to configure themselves automatically on the network. And one of the ways that technology is used is through something called iChat, which is their chatting application. Now, if we were over in the Macintosh group right now, that Rendezvous list would be full of buddies that are on that list. I'll show you what they look like by logging into the other half of the account here. And this is their chatting application, and guess what account I'm using to log into it? I'm using my .Mac account. So here's all the different buddies that I have. And here, this kind of thing would be populated over here by any of the Macs that are within the subnet that are running iChat at the same time. That's one application of Rendezvous that they use, and I could then just initiate a chat. They don't have to be on my buddy list at all. They have to be within, as I say, within the same subnet. Another place that it's used, and I can't show it to you, is in iTunes. And if I had another copy of iTunes on another Mac running, what would happen here is underneath the purchased music, you would see something called shared music that would show up. And you could click on that, and all of the users running iTunes 4 would show up underneath that. I could click on it, and anyone else's music listing then shows up on the screen. And so I could actually play. It just streams it across the network to my machine. I can play their music. So it's pretty interesting from a couple scenarios. One, it's just kind of fun to be able to play music from other people. And this got launched, and productivity dropped in the Mac group for a week while we all listened to what everyone else was listening to. But it's also interesting to think in terms of what this could allow for Apple to do in places like the home. Because with Rendezvous, to pre-configure this networking and this ability to just have this app stream music around the home over a wireless network, which, by the way, Apple sells and builds into the operating system, you could imagine devices being hooked to your stereo that are talking to your Mac and streaming this music. It's exactly what TiVo is doing. So TiVo has announced support for iTunes and Rendezvous, and the new TiVo devices coming out within, I think it's like the next 2 or 3 months, will allow you to just simply take an iTunes list, hook your TiVo up, have it on the network somehow, and be able to hit play and listen to the music coming off your Mac that you bought on the store or ripped from CD. So there's another application of it. Let me get out of this quickly, and I'll show you this application called Sherlock. I was hoping to be able to show you iPhoto as well, but it looks like we're going to run out of time. So Sherlock is a interesting application. Sherlock is a front end on the various web services that replaces a browser interface to go against different back ends for things like flights, eBay, whatever, and allows you to use a client-side application to get access to this stuff. So, for instance, one of the different, what they call channels that's available is something called Movies. And so I can actually come down here. I live in Kirkland. I can find out what's playing at Kirkland Park Place and what time it's playing. And all it's doing is it's going against MoviePhone's site and pulling all this information down and displaying that within the Sherlock window. So I can actually get access to all that information from here without actually having to go to the website. So I can see comments on it. If it would ever respond, I would see the poster. I could actually play a movie preview as well. Matrix have got to have one. So that doesn't seem to be working for some reason. But that's, for instance, one of the things that Sherlock does. It has a number of other things, too. I can go to eBay, and I can, decide I want to go and look for something. And again, this is just a front end onto the eBay service.
Aren't the content providers? I would think that too, because they're not getting the advertising revenue now, or the people are going, or just they're gleaning the information without actually seeing all the whatever ad streams.
Very true, very true. And so Apple has a list of providers that they've gone to and worked directly with to get these things done. They have released a third-party developer kit, so you could build your own channel. I would say that Sherlock is an interesting technology that just hasn't worked because I think of that reason, and because I think the web interface isn't that bad in a lot of cases. This doesn't add a tremendous amount of value in certain cases.
Transactions, like can you buy a ticket?
That's part of the problem, and generally no. Let's see if we couldn't seem to get that to work. See if any of the channels are coming up. So I can check on the status of a flight here. Time is it? So I know, for some bizarre reason.
So is the main goal to provide a uniform interface to all of the different...
We're not sure. I'll be very honest with you. I'm not sure how Sherlock fits into their strategy. I can tell you a couple things that we think might be the case. Sherlock could be a front end to .Mac. It could be the way that you access a bunch of these services. It doesn't look like Apple's going down that path. They keep making investments in individual applications. It could be a way for them to add things like purchasing and advertising and bring other content providers in to help mitigate one of the concerns, which is a lot of websites aren't compatible with the Mac. And so this may be a way to go and help do that. But again, it seems to have been a separate effort that doesn't seem to be tightly integrated with a lot of other stuff that's going on. So it's hard for us to know. We don't, in our discussions with them, have them asking us to build .Mac support, or build Sherlock support into the Microsoft Support database or into MSN and things like that. Although I'm not so surprised with the MSN one.
Wasn't there some talk of Sherlock being a natural language interface to things like search and so on?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the Mac rumor mill is always churning away at these things. But again, we're not hearing anything from them around that. From Sherlock. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to be connecting anymore on this, so I'm not sure what's actually happening. But as I say, when Sherlock, this is version 3, when this version came out, it made us really try to figure out what the heck this was and where it fit in. But frankly, the level of interest and energy that they're putting behind it and how much they've really tried to push from a development standpoint tells us it's really not a strategic asset for them. By way of example, I'm not aware of anything on their developer conference agenda coming up in a week or so to talk about Sherlock and Sherlock channels. There's just nothing about this there. So I think that is probably one indication of how important that may be. So that's...
Does it integrate email and photos?
What's that?
Does it integrate email and photos off of .Mac?
Sherlock doesn't, but iPhoto does. I mean, I'm running over. If you want me to, do you want me to show it for 5 minutes?
I'd put in a plug for how easy it is to publish photos. It's just so simple.
Well, let me do it then. All right, I'll take 5 minutes, and I'll have to apologize to my friends from MSN on this. I'm going to do the full bore demo too. So I brought my camera, and I want to show you this whole experience. So I'm going to take a picture of all of you because I want that for all posterity. And I assume that worked. Beautiful. We're going to take 2 pictures. There we go. There you go. Oh, thank you for all smiling. I can't see any of you. That flash didn't work. But you know what? It doesn't matter because you'll get the idea anyway. So I've just taken my camera. And this is the experience that somebody who has a new Mac and a new digital camera would have. They just take their camera, plug it into the machine with their included USB cord or whatever it is. And once the computer notices that, this happens a lot faster usually. There it is. It popped up. You see the bouncing icon in the dock. That's iPhoto, which is their photo management tool. That'll bring iPhoto up automatically. Hope I have no embarrassing photographs here. And then automatically jump to what they call the import section. There's my camera. I have 2 photos on it. I can click on import and actually erase the photos off of it so I can clean off the memory card and just confirm that so I don't delete it by accident. Goes out, pulls those photos down. There's a picture of the desk. And here's a dark picture of you, which we're going to put onto the internet. So there you go. So now that's it. I've just pulled all the photos down. I can actually go up here to the last import. And I've got some neat little controls that allow me to zoom in on these things so I can see them nice and big. And this isn't nearly as impressive as doing it with an entire photo library, which might be hundreds of photos. And you can zoom all the way down to see a ton of them all at once, or zoom all the way up so you can actually edit or select photos. I can take these things and I can do a couple things. So this gentleman's point over here, one of the things I can do is I can take a set of photos. I can run a slideshow. So you're meeting with family and you say, I just took a bunch of pictures of my daughter. I can go down to... Let me do that. What the heck? Right? Click on Slideshow. Now here's a great example of the Macintosh integration between all these applications. Here's my iTunes library. So I can just come down here, say I'd like to play some old song from Beautiful South. Click on that. So that entire playlist came up. It loads them up. Brings them up on screen. There you go. So, I mean, just that integration is very, very seamless and very, very easy to do these kinds of things. I'll jump out of there. I could have gone a lot longer, trust me. A couple other things. Ordering prints. Let's say I really love this photo right here, and I want to order some prints of that. I click on Order Prints. I've entered my .Mac account information. It connects me right up to Apple's website, and I'm not off to a website. I'm sitting right within iPhoto. and I say, you know what I'd really like to get? I'd like to get a 16 by 20 print of that and add that to it. So you can just go and simply enter. This is funny. Set up account. Oh, I know what it is. So one of the things you need to do here is Apple licensed Amazon.com's one-click technology to allow you to just purchase with one click. You have to actually set that up. So let me just show you. I'm not going to order a poster-size shot of my daughter, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Again, you can see there's, by the way, a Create Account button there. So if you don't have a .Mac account, there's another place you can just get that set up. Hold all that down, click Continue, show my password to everybody. That's excellent. I'm so pleased. I accept all the legalese, which I've read before, so I just can do that quickly. Yes, yes, yes. Provide a title. You know, whatever. Okay, I'm not going to go through that. But anyhow, you can see here that all you literally do is just pick the number of prints you want. It shows you what it is. You click Purchase. It sends the order to Apple, and having done it a couple times, they get back to you in about 2 days with some pretty amazing-looking photographs. They're actually quite good. They use OPhoto on the back end. Apple made an investment in them about 4 years ago. Yeah.
If the .Mac system has all this information, why aren't they filling out those forms?
That's a wonderful question. I'm not sure. Now, it filled out all those forms with my information, so that's how it got my address and all those sort of things, because that's not sitting someplace else here. But it's clearly asking for a few other things to activate that one-click technology there. That's ordering photos, so again, another revenue stream for them. Related to that is ordering books. Now, books are actual hardbound, cloth-covered books that, frankly, look fantastic. They're about $30 a piece. Oh my God, don't assemble a 110-page book. But you literally can do a professional layout and send this thing off to be printed. By default, they're about $30, and the $30 books are about 10 pages. You can do a book, I believe it's up to 80 or 90 pages, so a very lengthy one. And that book ends up being very expensive, obviously. But these are super high quality. They're like gift quality books that you would actually give to somebody, if anyone's ever done that. It's not that this is just unique to iPhoto, but certainly something that, they have tied in again to another service provider. I don't know if it's iPhoto.
Can you add captions to the book?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You go through, and you do it from within iPhoto. You don't go to the web. You don't go and play around in some sort of slow refreshing web page. You just do it here. And the book is stored. So you can work on it for a couple hours, leave, come back, keep working, come back, and go iterate on it until you got it right. Last thing here is homepage. So I can take photographs from this. This is how I would publish these photos to the web. I simply click on this, and it brings up this user interface here. I decide which account, because maybe I've got multiple accounts on this machine because I have it at home or what have you. I choose a particular layout for this. I then just click on this text and say, here's my daughter. I can add captions to it or whatever I want. And when I'm done, you can send me a message so that you know that it's there. Or so that it adds this button to it so that people can actually email you if you want. Click to add a counter so you can keep track of how many people are looking at your child. Click Publish. Puts the home page up there, uploads the photograph to it. Click View Page Now. Loads up the browser. There it is. Simple as that. This kind of thing is just, again, sort of the theme of how Apple's done this stuff. They've really built that level of integration to the point where it's extremely easy to do some of these things. You don't have as many options as you do with other solutions in many cases, but what they have picked off are the things that they think people really want to do, and they try to make sure that they do those really well. So that's, again, just up on my .Mac account. So I'm going to end here because otherwise I'm going to cut too much into everyone else's time. I hope that was useful, and I really appreciate the chance to come talk about this. Do you need this connection?
No, I just...
That's right.
So do you guys know that Google's next?
So I won't be doing any demos because I'm not sure how many queries you could stand before you all started walking out of the room. But what I will want to do today is take you through an overview we gave for the MSN leadership team on Google. It was part of our fiscal year 04 planning process. We wanted to bring them up to speed on what Google was doing, some of the competitive issues that we face. So I'll quickly walk you through this. We spent about an hour and a half going through this deck one day, so we only have about a half hour. So clearly, Google's mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. And when you think about what they're doing, they really are focused only on this. We always talk about, when's Google going to go into IM? When are they going to offer perhaps email? When are they going to become their own portal? They don't seem to be going down this path. They really become a portal because they've really drawn people into search because it's such a huge reach on the web. It's the number one thing that people are doing today out on the web. So a quick timeline of kind of how Google's got to where they are today. They really got going in 98. A couple of big points to take notice of. They launched Google.com in 99. They got into the advertising space the next year in 2000. They really grew their index in 2001. And I think another big event was in the 2002 when they really started to go after Overture, which is their competitor in the paid advertising space. They signed AOL that year. They signed Ask Jeeves, so they really started to put pressure on Overture. And then in this year, they're really kind of starting to extend beyond search in 2003 by going after contextual advertising. So some of their strategies, this is something I pulled together because they're a private company. They don't talk a lot about what they're doing and why they're doing it. But if you look at 03, it was all about trying to grab share by signing AOL and Ask, improving their relevance. So they launched category search, or you could search within news. You can search within Frugal. They launched enterprise search, so you can get the search appliance that's built on the Linux OS. And then they entered contextual. But as we look through 04 and where we think they're going, we think they want to dominate the keyword space. They want to squeeze Overture and really make a big run on contextual. They want to improve relevance, so they're always looking at ways to improve search relevance. But I think they're also looking at ways to improve their contextual advertising relevance. They're going to go deeper into enterprise. I've talked about some of the new features they're going to roll out, and I'll walk you through those. We don't think they're going to IPO in 04. They've thrown off a lot of cash. We got a quick financial overview I can take you through, and we'll talk about where they're making money. The market's still pretty stale for IPOs, so there's really, the longer they wait, the better off there are. We don't see them buying any huge acquisitions. So if you kind of sum it up, we think they're going to wait a little bit before they move into a public offering. So from a financial perspective, we pulled this together with an internal analysis based on kind of what we've heard about them, kind of what we've heard about their deals. So point A, we think over half their revenue comes from Google.com. They have a lot of affiliate revenue, but that comes at a pretty heavy price because they offer 80% rev shares. And to put it in perspective, our deal with Overture today for all of our paid listing business, we get a 65 rev share. So they're really going out and they're offering these huge rev shares, pretty much giving away the business to take out Overture and kind of go after this space. We did an analysis of what their COGS are to operate their web search services and their business. This is our first cut at it. So we thought in 03 they were probably around 60 million. We've been digging deeper into what their COGS are, and we think they're probably closer to 30 million for serving all their queries. And then we talked about their heavy traffic acquisition costs. So from an org, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think Google thinks of themselves as a research group. They probably would look at you and say, yeah, we're just like Microsoft Research. They have 10% of their whole shop is PhDs. They work in really small teams, so they'll have 2 to 3 people working on new concepts. They'll push them out in front of users. They'll test them. And if something seems to be taken off, they'll bring a whole team together to work on it, make it really useful, and then begin to integrate it into the search services. We look at them as a risk-oriented group. They talk about failing is good, but a good failure is better. So if you can kind of push stuff out, even if you fail, but you learn about it, you can kind of work that into your next product offering. So even if things are just kind of hacked together, they'll still push them out early. They're very big in the open source environment. They boast being the biggest Linux shop. We think they have probably around 25,000 Linux servers. But they're also big within the community. A good example of this is their translation service that you can get. So if you get a web page from another country, you can see it in English. They signed up 35,000 user volunteers to help them translate all the web pages or translate languages for them. So they're really big about going out to the community to get help with stuff. So they're really passionate about delivering great results, and you can just look at some of the satisfaction studies that we have done on MSN, and it really bubbles up to the top, that their VSAT overall is 71% compared to our VSAT at 52. And again, this is MSN users, so we probably even have a higher bias with respect to VSAT. But the key drivers around their high VSAT is really about delivering great results, and that has to do with speed, how many they find, is it easy to understand the results, and are they relevant? They are, but they kind of muck with the results a little bit, and they wrap their own stuff around it. So, and they've taken away attribution for Google, so people don't really know anymore. So down in the left-hand corner, we'll talk a little bit about kind of how they view customers. They really view them as coming first in the whole process. They have the mantra inside is, don't be evil. It needs to benefit the user, not just Google. They have 10 heads just reading feedback from users and pushing that out around the org to try to improve results and using that feedback. They talk about features really being useful, not just usable. So even though something might be usable, and if it's not useful to the user, they won't push it out. And they also talk about aspiring to be like a Swiss Army knife. So features should be closed unless you really need them, and then you pull them out one at a time. And so that's kind of how they think of their features. So translation is a great example of that. You'll never know that there's translation going on unless you get a web result that's not English-based. And again, they look at customers as kind of their R&D shop, and that's what they do with the labs. They try to push things out in front of users to see what they think of them. A couple of good examples. News was born kind of out of this concept where 2 or 3 people were working on it. They only had 450 news feeds. They got a lot of really good feedback. They put 10 people on it, got 4,500 news feeds, and now push it out to users, and it's starting to ramp every month. You see more and more people using it. And Google Clips is a good example of how they kill things via the lab. So if you ever see MSN search results and you'll see a clip come back for one of our editorial sites, which is internal, they did a test for a while having their own clips, and they pushed it out in the lab, and they found, even though they optimized for broadband, that 5% of their users were going into the preference and turning off clips. And they realized that only 1 to 2% of their users ever go into preferences and make any changes. So they realized they had a pretty big problem, and they killed the clips because they figured users just didn't want it. So if you go over to the right, they really think about users, but they're also a data-driven org. So they're always tracking user clicks and what they're doing on the page, and they're always adjusting their search algorithm to kind of make improvements there. They have FTEs that just do relevance checks across different search engines internally, and they try to improve based on that feedback. And then they have all their different 100 data points that they use to try to improve relevance. So, how many sites link to a search result, and what's the relationship to words on the page. So if you think about their high satisfaction, this begins to convert into their user base. So up at the top, we have data on international search usage. And I even put a comparison into just to MSN.com to put it in perspective. So we think sometime in FY04, pretty early in the year, that Google's going to surpass MSN.com worldwide. If you strip out IM usage, they've already done that today. So, year over year internationally, they've grown at 96%, which is, tremendous growth. If you look down on the bottom of the page, this is U.S. data. So we get a pretty big lift from auto search users. So people, maybe DNS error pages if you type in the wrong URL, or people who query from the address bar. We get a pretty big lift from those users. They're not really valuable from a monetization perspective because they'll do one query and then they'll leave. But if you strip those, even with that lift that we get, we think Google is going to pass us in the U.S. In FY04 as far as usage. So when you think about usage, then you kind of, how does this extend to overall market share and what does this mean? So I've been analyzing market share from a query perspective using Nielsen net ratings data. So I think worldwide Google has a 50% share. And they get a pretty big lift from EMEA because that accounts for 72% of international queries. And they also get about 40% share in the U.S. So worldwide, I think they have a 50% share of queries. If you slide over to the right, we can kind of drill down into the U.S. because we have better data there. So their primary source is Google.com in the U.S. That's 39% of their market share. But they also get a lift from secondary traffic sources. So they actually get, when you think about share, they power the back ends of Yahoo and they power AOL. So if you combine those together, there's 64% share in the U.S. of web search. We think that Yahoo's going to replace Google sometime this year with Inktomi. Or why else would they pay $235 million for them? But they haven't done it yet, and it's kind of interesting. They've actually expanded their relationship with Google by adding image search during their last release. So we think there'll still be a relationship there, but we're not sure how deep it'll be. And then Google also gets kind of this third tier web search query lift that we really can't track today. So they power Amazon search, they power Washington Post and CNN. So they get some additive queries there. We're just not sure how many queries that amounts to because we don't have visibility into that data. So if you go down to the bottom part of the box, all of this search share turns into advertising opportunity. So clearly the Google.com channel is really their number one opportunity. We don't think they monetize these queries as well as other sites. If you look at MSN search results, we're really heavily monetized for probably half of our queries, where Google, they clearly have the ads at the top and on the side, and they're clearly labeled. So this is something that we're looking at internally. We're trying to fix this kind of stuff. Yeah?
Is there any sense of what the penetration of the Google toolbar is, or how much that's added to their...
Yeah, about 10% of their users have a toolbar, and I think it provides a 20% lift in query volume. Now, we lose sight of query volumes after the user does a query in the toolbar, so it's probably more than 20%, but it's definitely power users who are using that toolbar a lot. And so one of the things that we want to do in FY04 is get our own toolbar out there. So it's something that we're working on. So when you think about Overture, they have the second highest ad opportunity because of MSN search and Yahoo search. They power ads for both of those sites. And Google's leveraging their AdWords business to kind of push that out to secondary partners like AOL. So they have pretty big share there through AOL and Ask Jeeves as far as paid opportunity. So what I want to do is take you through some of their product offerings. And, so let me back up just real quick because we're about to enter FY04, and I'm sure, how many of you use Google more than you use MSN search? All right, pretty scary, huh? So over the next year, you guys probably know that we're going down the path of building out our own algorithmic search engine. We're in the process of hiring 70 new headcount. And so one of the things we want to do is really get competitive with Google in the web search space. And so that's clearly a focus of our team over the next year. We talked early about Google revenue. So we think Google.com made $230 million in revenue. But to put in perspective, in FY03, we're going to come in around $304 million in search-related revenue. Even put that in more perspective, in FY02, we made about $133 million in search-related revenue. So we're definitely making a lot of investments, but as we think about improving relevance over the next fiscal year, we're going to really be careful about how we go deeper into monetization. So we're not going to have the huge growth that we saw between 02 and 03. We're only going to grow monetization at a rate of about 20%. So we definitely are going to go and get more competitive with Google as far as how we serve up results. And then towards the end of FY04 and FY05, we'll have our own algorithmic search engine. So a lot of the things that we're going to kind of walk through in the next 15 minutes, we'll begin to have the opportunity to do ourselves if we choose. So first I want to talk to you about, their franchise is clearly Google.com because they have a huge amount of queries and share. But then they have other offerings that they extend out to third parties. through web search services and site search and even their AdWords platform. And then I'll talk to you about what they're doing in contextual and how they're approaching that market. We'll skip the enterprise search. This deck is out on a share that I think is in your group, so you can kind of look through all the backup slides. There's a slide in there about what they're doing in enterprise search. There's not a lot of information today on what they're doing in enterprise and where they're going. Yeah.
Do they sell a version for the personal user, the machine, like just mining?
No, it's all enterprise based. And in the cheapest offering, I think it's in the mid $20,000 a year, so per year. And then we'll talk quickly about some of their other investments. And I hate to kind of rush, but I want to make sure you guys see this stuff and still not go over. So really Google's leveraging kind of what they built on Google.com and trying to extend that platform. So, Google.com, when you think about it on the top, they're really focused on the users, and that's where all the money is. And so over the past several years, they talk about quietly building the best search engine. They're clearly focusing on the users. They feel if they really hit the user with relevance, that users will come and so will the money. And clearly that's been the case. They don't really promote Google from an advertising perspective. It's really kind of been this viral word of mouth. So they're just trying to leverage their traffic to drive revenue, but again, users come first. They don't push ads right in your face. It's very subtle and they're very relevant. And then they're trying to drive global adoption by seeding new markets. They're really aggressive about going internationally. So some of their strategies, it's really all about relevance from a Google.com perspective. They're going into this category search and all the focus groups that we've been doing and a lot of the research, giving users great category kind of focused results is what they're looking for. So a good example, you search Mustang, is the user really interested in cars or horses? And so as users think about their results, they actually want the search engine to bucket those results into those categories and help them narrow their search results faster. So as you guys think about maybe ways to improve search, that's the number one thing on the minds of users today. So Google's trying to do this through shopping and news and images and other things like that. But they're also acquiring to improve relevancy and really kind of creating this kind of community. So I look at the acquisition of Blogger as a way that they might potentially improve relevance. So we've heard that Blogger postings are usually the first sign that breaking news is happening. And if they have all that content and they have it first, they can scrape it and understand maybe what's going to come up. So if somebody searches on the space shuttle, they might already know about it before it hits the news wires. That could be an example of that. One of their strategies around kind of driving revenue is building a friendly advertising platform. So make it relevant, base it on the search terms, but make it secondary on Google. And then they want to localize. So they have offices in 12 countries. They're opening up. We think they're opening up a data center in Dublin in the next few months. But they're in 12 countries. They have 67 language UIs, and you can see Google results from 88 different languages in English. So from a revenue plan perspective, today they have two different advertising models on Google.com. On the top of the search results are CPM-based ads, and on the right are click-based ads. So advertisers on the right pay to appear up at the top, but they also bubble up to the top based on click-through, so they kind of measure relevance with those ads too. We think today we talk about advertising from a coverage perspective. So how many queries have an ad on them? Our coverage today is around 44% for the search pane. So that means today we do one-to-one mapping for search queries. So if you search on Mustang, we'll send that to Overture. And Overture, if somebody's paid for Mustang, we'll return an ad. Google does fuzzy matching. So if you search on Hawaiian vacations and somebody's paid for Hawaiian Gulf vacations, they'll show you an ad. So they kind of do fuzzy matching. So we think they have more advertising than we do, but we think their click-through is less than ours, so they don't make as much money. Another thing that they might be doing around from a revenue plan is extending monetization into new areas. We could see them selling news as a a service to another company who wants search news results on their website, or even wrapping those with ads. So let's drop down to the next box and talk about what they're doing with their affiliate relationships. So to me, this is all about sharing the query costs amongst many different partners. If they do that, the queries on their site become even cheaper for them. They also want to put pressure on Overture. If they take Overture out of the business, they can even charge more money for advertising on Google.com, which helps boost their revenue even more. And it's all about growing profitability. So, taking that same AdWords platform that they already have and pushing it out to partners and making even more money on that, and then taking the same web search that they have on Google.com and just reselling it. So from a strategy perspective, they're trying to offer end-to-end solutions, so you can get web search and you get the ads platform all in one, and you can make a lot of money if you're a big site like AOL. And they're also trying to leverage their unique assets, so their high share, their great brand. They're trying to leverage that across many different partners. And they're trying to grow revenue while still keeping their costs low. So from a revenue perspective, they charge about 65 cents per 1,000 queries for large sites. To put it in perspective, we pay 77 cents today to Inktomy, so they have a much better business model from a partner perspective. If you're a medium site and you don't do a lot of volume, you can still get Google. You're just going to have to pay a little bit more. And then they'll do high rev share for ads, but even if you're a smaller site, you can still get 55% rev share on the advertising. They also offer this ready-to-go for solutions for really small sites. So you can pay like a monthly fee to get Google search. They even have a free Google search if you allow them to put advertising on your website. So let's talk about contextual advertising, because I think this is going to be an area where they're really going to push in the next year. So they peg the market size for contextual ads around $1 to $2 billion. We've kind of done our own internal analysis and put it in a similar ballpark. So they really want to grow revenue outside this area, leverage what they've done around search relevance, and use their same AdWords platform and bake it into content pages. So today they're aggressively going out and buying cheap banner ads, and they've plugged contextual ads into the banner ads, and they're trying to make more money than it's costing them to buy the banner ads. So we've heard this isn't working too well. They're not renewing those banner buys, but it's another good example of how they're aggressive and try new things, and if things don't work, they'll take them down. Again, we've heard from some of our partners that they're offering big rev share and contextual ads to try to get people to sign up and get them hooked. So one of their other strategies is to use the content on the page to figure out what's relevant. So it's not just looking at the text on the page, but understanding the fonts on the page and the layout on the page, and really scraping that page and trying to understand it. And they bought a company called Applied Semantics earlier in 2003. This was a big blow to Overture, who's our partner. Overture was working with Applied Semantics to try to improve the relevance of their contextual ads. So now they don't have that offering, or they have to build it themselves. And it helps Google try to improve some of the problems that they've had with their contextual advertising, not being as relevant as it is for search. So from a revenue plan perspective, it's really very similar to what you see in the web search business. It's all about click-through and trying to drive the most clicks. But we also can see them kind of building out this associates program where they offer an API to kind of add the contextual ads to the content page and let it be more of a viral offering and pushing it out there. So let's talk a little bit kind of about some of their strategic investments. We only have about 5 minutes or so left. So from a toolbar perspective, it's really about extending Google to all over the web. No matter what web page you are, the toolbar is there, and you can do a query. And they also want to control navigation of the web, because more and more users are using search to navigate as opposed to typing in the address bar. And they're also, and Google's starting to plug in some of their offerings into their own toolbar. So you can click on news from the toolbar and go right to to that page. So as they begin to kind of control more content and categorize it, you can see Google controlling where you go on the web with that toolbar. So we think they continue to download about 150 to 300,000 toolbars every month. One of their other interesting strategies, they have one of the things they want to do with this toolbar is really track where users go on the web. So not only is it kind of controlling where you do searches and where you go, but they want to see where else you go on the web outside of their search site. So if you've had a chance to kind of read through what they're doing with the toolbar, they're really watching where you are. And it's something that we're thinking about for our toolbar, how far we'll go with it, because we're Microsoft. We might get a lot of pushback trying to do the same thing. They actually had a lot of negative press about their toolbar and all the tracking issues, so we may see them pull back a little bit from that. So some of the unique features from the toolbar perspective up in the top right, a lot of shortcuts. You can right-click search from a web page because you have the toolbar installed. Users like the page rank technology. A feature I use a lot is the keyword highlighting. So if you're trying to do research on a web page and you're looking for a word, you can put it in the Google box and hit highlight and try to find it on the page faster. They also talked about the Google Compute. I'm sure you guys have read a lot about this. But one of the things that they're doing is using idle time of PCs to help what they call nonprofit research projects. But if you kind of read through the fine print, they talk about using that idle PC time to potentially include projects to improve Google and its services. So they've kind of got this underlying theme going there. Some of the other experiments that they've been working on, wireless, they've had that out there for a long time. Clearly, it's another way to kind of get an entry point and drive more queries. Blogger, we talked a little bit about the Blogger and trying to create more of a community and kind of improve their own internal relevance. But then there's content like Frugal that's currently in the labs that we haven't seen them do anything with. It's more of an experiment, but potentially it's going to become a big section, I think, if you look at all the investment that Yahoo's making with shopping. Google, if they control shopping on the web, it could just potentially take off for them. And there's a lot of other things that they're doing around voice search. They recently launched voice search and select BMW automobiles. So they kind of are experimenting in a bunch of different areas right now. So the product roadmap, we've heard they're going to try near real-time indexing sometime in the second quarter of fiscal year of this year. So today they update their index once a month. We think as they crawl the web, they'll incrementally update their index to try to make it fresher. In this Q403, they've talked about integrating document security at the enterprise level. We're pretty sure since they've bought Applied Semantics, they'll begin to integrate Applied Semantics into their contextual advertising. And then there's a couple other things that they've talked about, stemming and doing synsets, things that aren't surprising. But one of the things that they've really talked about, some of the competitive data we dug up, is doing P2P at the enterprise level. It's not really clear what this means. We got this through primary research. One of the things I thought about when I heard this from the enterprise level, you could see them crawling all the different machines within an enterprise and understanding which files are shared out from that machine and allowing a company to search through different folders on a machine. It's unclear if that's where they're going, but they've talked about it. And one of the quotes, they said they want to beat Microsoft at peer-to-peer. So as you guys think about that quote. So we also think they want to invest in personalization. This is going to be a big push from us. We think personalization is a big thing. We think it might be 30% of web searches are potentially local in nature. So if you can understand where a user lives, you can give them a more personalized result by understanding that you should only show them a select set of results that are only within their area. And they've also talked about sometime late next year going into the Yellow Pages business. So Google never has paid inclusion on Google.com web results, or at least they say they don't. We think Yellow Pages is a way for them to offer paid inclusion results within the web search set of results. So potentially they're going to use Yellow Pages to go in this path. So some key takeaways. We spent an hour and a half with the senior leadership team drilling into Google, and it sounds all gloom and doom. They've really done a good job, but there's a lot of studies out there that say 50 to 75% of questions still don't get answered for web search. They have a lot of market share, but they don't have this network effect. There's really no barriers from switching from Google.com, so we have a lot of opportunity to grab share back by making a better offering. They have a solid brand, but they still, they haven't gone in the direction of personalizing results. So there's a lot of different things that we could potentially do. Yeah.
Do they see any risk? I've seen a lot of stuff in the last couple of months on Google Watch and stuff like that, where people are concerned about, because it's a private algorithm and so forth. There's no means of verifying whether they're highlighting certain links and cutting other ones down and stuff like that. Do you think that it might be possible to compete in that space by making results more verifiable in some way?
Yeah, it's hard. Google, if you look at Google Watch, it's a couple of people really tracking Google. From a user perspective, users probably don't know and don't really care. So it's kind of hard to beat them in that. That's a good PR thing from a B2B perspective. So I have 1 minute left. Yeah.
A couple of things. The wireless thing you didn't really go into too deeply. I'm an MDD, and I'm interested in if we have any collaboration going on between our mobile device and any pilots with MSN that would do wireless-specific search strategies, not just trying to put up some kind of T9 input for search.
Yeah, so we've been talking about where does wireless fit in within the 3-year strategy. It's probably 2 years out, just because we first need to build that search engine, and that's going to. Well, they're already doing it, and they have been doing it. It's hard to get. We don't have any data today on wireless search. I'm pushing Nielsen to start tracking this. They don't have an easy way of doing it.
Are there beta programs that an interested third party might want to join?
What's that?
Do they have any beta programs for their wireless search that we're aware of?
Not that I know of. I know they do offer APIs to developers to integrate web search into competing. Anything that a developer might be building, you could build web search into it. But from a wireless, I'm not sure. Yeah.
If I upload a page today on my personal website, on average, how long would it take for the crawlers of the Google put that into the database so it can be available for the query search?
So, they say they're updating their index every month. How often they get to every single page is another story. And we're kind of struggling with this internally as we look to build out our search engine. How often do you crawl pages, and which pages do you crawl first? Because clearly there's a set of documents that you want to get every 10 minutes even, or every minute. And then there's others who never change. So we don't have any verifiable data that says they get every page once a month.
Actually, that makes zero sense to me, but having, near real-time indexing, that's really stupid, because a vast number of pages don't get updated for days or weeks or months on end. So what I would interpret it as saying that they increase the number of pages which they update more often.
Yeah, right. It might not be every page, but it sounds like as they crawl, they're going to update the index, whereas before they were doing it once a month. That's kind of what I've heard. It's primary research, so it's not real clear what it means.
What do you mean by primary research?
So alpha is the diving into dumpsters to find information. James Bond likes stuff. So a lot of times the data, you kind of hear it. You have to digest it for what it is and think about what it really means. And it's not always clear.
Is there any standards activity going on to improve the web standards to make it easier to crawl over search?
Not that I know of. I mean, there's not a central org that's talking about how do you kind of bring that together. Yeah.
Does Google actually publish the criteria for their page rank?
No. They talk about 100 different data points. They talk about how many sites link to your site as one of the primary, but then they don't get into the other. They don't tell you how much weight they put on that. Thanks. Appreciate it.